Welcome to the Tao of Pizza, where we feature top logistics leaders, entrepreneurs, and supply chain innovators and share their inspiring stories with a holistic twist.
So this is Mark Hiddleson here, host of the Tao of Pizza podcast, where I talk to top industry innovators in the warehousing, logistics, and supply chain business with a holistic twist. But before I introduce our guest today, David Smith, this episode is brought to you by Specialized Storage Solutions. Listen, I've been in the logistics and storage industry for several decades. I don't look that old, but it's true. We provide industry-leading warehouse and storage solutions nationwide. So basically, if you have a warehouse that needs rack, shelving, carts, conveyors, or mezzanines, we help with design, engineering, installations, inspections, and repairs to help clients optimize their logistics operations. You know what, David? Sometimes people don't even realize that we can actually help with permit acquisition services. We take a holistic look at your entire business supply chain ecosystem to develop the resources for continually improving your operation. To learn more, visit specialracks.com or give us a call at 707-732-3892. I'll even give you my personal email address for podcast listeners. So email me at markhiddleson@aol.com if you're ready to take your warehouse storage and retrieval systems to the next level. And I also want to make sure I do this first. I want to give a big shout out to Greg Owens. He hosted me a few weeks ago on the Watching Paint Dry podcast, which features today's top facility managers, property managers, and property owners, where they talk about the challenges and opportunities of managing hundreds of thousands of square feet of real estate and how to beautify and improve their properties. Greg and I had a great conversation, and we'll have a link to that interview in the description. But I'll tell you, I'm really excited to introduce David Smith. I mean, he's an enterprising senior operations executive with decades of experience enhancing performances. He's identified improvement avenues, implemented roadmaps and strategies to scale growth in matrix environments. David's a black belt lean leader equipped with thought leadership and best practices in logistics operations to translate strategic intent into actionable plans, drive efficiencies, reduce costs, improve services, and enhance team development and culture by instilling autonomy and pride in staff. David's negotiated and formed independent decisions and solutions regarding warehousing, logistics, automation, and transportations. He's provided both leadership and vision to integrated logistics projects, utilizing a blend of technology and people to elevate overall operational performance. And I just want to highlight a few of David's track records for deploying these type of projects. He spearheaded the startup of the West Coast Fulfillment Center to supply Toys R Us e-commerce orders for the Western region. He executed a transition from 3 facilities down to 1 in a Hebron, Kentucky facility for a large apparel retailer. And he successfully decommissioned multiple distribution centers across the country. David, it's a pleasure to have you on the Tao of Pizza.
That's great to be here, Mark. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, and so I wanted to, this is a great opportunity. I've known you for a few years now. When I
almost
say
20.
Almost
20 years. It's been almost 20 years since we did our first job together.
Yeah, so I'm thinking I must have been in kindergarten when we did.
It was in Salt Lake City for our first job.
Yeah, Salt Lake City. So I definitely want to talk about that. It was a fun project the way we first met. But tell me kind of how, I know you went to Kansas State. It's a great school. But tell me how you got into the logistics. How did you get into the logistics industry?
I started off at UPS, really, unloading trucks at DFW Airport, really as a part-time job, and worked my way through school and just kind of stuck in the industry. Got in with a company called Martin Brower, which distributes food to McDonald's, and just worked my way up through the ranks. And it's what I've always done.
Yeah, and I have to ask you something too. And I read your introduction, and I read it again. But I want you to explain to me what you mean by matrixed environments. I think I know what that is, but that's
to me, that's where you're keeping track of things. You've got to put KPIs in place. You've got to keep track of key indicators and key points in your business, and you've got to know the levers to pull to be able to react, to get those to move.
Yeah, and it's matrix because it's a blend. You're not. I mean, you've got people a lot of times don't realize in the warehouse there's all these that could be sales, could be driving a lot of your warehouse functions. So when you say matrix, you don't just get to be in a vacuum in logistics. You've got other
Right.
factors that drive, your inventory, how fast things get out the door. When you get your order, you get all your orders between 3:30 and 4:30 on a Friday, the last day of every
Right.
week. So
Well, and all the transportation challenges that are going on, not only with the outbound, but the inbound freight as well. Everything's connected.
yeah, everything's connected to everything. You've got a lot of experience in dealing with that, and you've got into some. Uh, you're one of the few people I know. I've seen a lot of robots in the industry, but when I think of robots, I think, man, David has been managing robots since. And it was Kiva, and I'm going to try to find a link to put in the description of what a Kiva system is. But I like what you said. That you blend not just technology, but people are a huge part of any solution. I think a lot of people, when they implement automation, you're looking at, I think it's the wrong way to look at it, is you're eliminating positions. I mean, you're finding a better way to integrate, like you said, create a holistic solution. So tell us a little bit about kind of that automation side.
Yeah, Kiva is now Amazon Robotics. So it's been bought by Amazon, but it's about maximizing your capacity per square foot. With today's labor market being as tight as it is, we're not putting people out of work by implementing these type of things. We're just increasing the capacity of the facility. We're making ourselves more profitable and more competitive, and we're meeting our customers' needs. Otherwise, people that do work there won't have a job because you can't keep up with customer demand.
Exactly, and that's what we're running up against right now. It's we don't have the people. I mean, to execute what we need to execute, and then now we're looking at growth. And I've talked to a lot of leaders in this industry, and they're saying the same thing. And also, what I see is that the automation isn't always the full. It's not the full answer. And I've seen, you attended one of the logistics. We call it poolside logistics 101, because it's kind of a roll up your sleeves. It's top minds in the industry, and we looked at an installation that I think it was a middle seven figure, $5-6 million solution. And the way we got involved in it is we bought their old system, and I looked at the old system like, oh, the old system looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
all too often though, a lot of times like automation gets put in and you work so hard to make the automation work that it doesn't feel like the automation is helping much. You've got to find that right balance between you need it to do and use it for what you installed it for. How many times have you seen where systems been put in and it was designed to do one thing and the business changed and they didn't change their automation, and so they try to get their old system to do something that's not intended to, and it's more work than itself.
Yeah.
You got to evolve. You got to update.
And you have to evolve. And I mean, I think that's part of that matrix approach, because like you said, there's variables that change. And when you're trying to get an 18 to 24 month payoff. Well, I mean, we've just lived recently through some 18 to 24 months that nobody could have predicted. Right.
But it could be some of the simplest updates, like the project we did in California, just document insertion and totes and things. It doesn't sound like much, but that's a body, that's a person, that you eliminate. That you don't. It's not you're eliminating. You don't have it put there. So now they're on the production floor doing something more productive.
Yeah. So I remember. So the first project I did with you was the Mervin's project, and we weren't the first vendor that you guys approved, and that was, I've been in the business about 8 or 9 years, but that was one of the first big projects I did on my own with specialized storage. What happened? I forget what we didn't get the original bid on that.
Right.
What happened?
Yeah, the original vendor, the day they were supposed to show up to start decommissioning that building, contacted me and pulled out. They pulled their bid
on the day you're supposed.
The day they were supposed to start. Yeah.
Because it was like a 1 month mobilization. I mean, that was a big project.
Yeah.
There was conveyor welded to the ceiling. There was the tank. And I'm going to ask you another question about the tank. So on the day they were supposed to show up, and then what happened?
Then we started scrambling, looking at everyone else that put in bids, and we put feelers out. And luckily for us, you stepped up, you came in and started within a week I was pretty surprised you had people on site within a week. And, we had a hard stop on that because we had to turn that building back over to the landlord. We had a huge penalty that we would have had to pay. So, we didn't have a whole lot of flexibility to get out of that facility. They already had somebody else coming in.
And that's a facility that I really love because they were automating. I mean, a lot of that stuff, like they had a pallet conveyor that was 600 feet long. And I know a lot of the stuff that they put in was, in a way, to me, it was ahead of its time because I've been in a lot of distribution centers I've seen. But then by the time we got our hands on it, it was the dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. It was a lot of stuff got ripped out of there. The shipping sorter and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff. A lot of it's scrap.
Yeah, and that's what was one of the first big projects that I had done like that, and I was surprised. I mean, the amount of scrap that was there, the amount of labor involved to get it out of there. But we were, the way our business works is we find people who can use those smaller. They need 200 feet of conveyor, they need a piece of this or a piece of that, or people needed stuff. I don't know if you remember, I painted a big, back then I wasn't that technologically. I took like a homecoming poster paper, like butcher paper, and put warehouse liquidation. I drove out there in my motorhome with my kids.
Yep. I remember that. Your son was running around selling stuff to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
He actually, it turns out Cody's working for us now. And I don't know if he was working for us when we did the project at Owens and Minor, but he brags that he's 27 years old. He's got 16 years of experience. He really does.
It's true. He does.
It makes a difference when, and they've seen some stuff like that. And that project was good. The way we met, so the way we first met, I always laugh about this because I was selling everything. It was office furniture, and we really don't normally get into that, but we were running out of time, and I'm like, I'll roll up my sleeves. I'll go out there. I'll sell this stuff myself on Craigslist. Like I said, we did it classified. Yeah. So the first time we met, I had your office set sold.
Yeah, you sold my desk.
I'm Mark Hiddleson. Yeah. There's no big hurry here, sir.
Yeah, that was fine with me. I popped up a card table and went to work.
Yeah. So it was one of those initial feelings where I'm like, okay, this is going to be okay, because I've dealt with a lot of people, and the first thing you do, you go and shake your hand. It's like, okay, buddy, you're moving out.
Yep. That was fine. We had to get out. We had a short time for it.
And we made it because you guys were so super supportive. Was it Randy Long? Was that your
Yeah, he's with Cardinal now.
Yeah, Randy's with Cardinal, so he was great to work with. I mean, we wouldn't have been able.
Yeah.
We executed quickly. That's one of the things we can do as a company. I've tried to develop a network of resources where, no matter where we are in the country, we can find good people, get a job done, commit to a time frame. I think that's one a lot of things people don't realize on a big project like that. The biggest thing is finishing on time.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that was a lot of fun. So. Tell me more about, when you did Gap, I wasn't too familiar with, and are we supposed to say Gap? I could have them edited out if we're not supposed to mention, but
they're fine.
You consolidated. It was a really neat project that you did there because they had multiple brands. They were in multiple buildings. Do you mind sharing some of what the thought process was, how they were able to get efficiencies, move 3 buildings into one?
Well, they had done away with the Old Navy factory store brand, and because the price points were so close together, so they closed one of the buildings there. And I remember that the shipping sorter was such a huge issue because we bought it back from you, I believe, and it was like a midnight type transaction. It was kind of interesting. But, I think you said in your prelude that you're coast to coast. And I can attest to that to all your listeners, because the first job we did, was Salt Lake City, which wasn't very far from Napa, where you're based, son. And then we went to Kentucky, which was a heck of a lot longer drive. The last one we did was in New Jersey. So we've literally gone coast to coast. Yep.
And I've done a couple projects in Philadelphia, but I'm pretty sure that, what was it? Cranberry was the city.
Cranberry, New Jersey.
I think that's the record for the farthest east we've gone.
It is far east, yes.
And that was an interesting project. It was one of those things where they had a large contractor in there. They were doing a big systems automation deal, but they needed somebody to decommission 2 pick modules. It was a tougher sale, and it was different sizes. It was awkward, but he gave us an opportunity. I really appreciate that. We went out there, and then there was this other pile of rack that I really, really wanted. And he told me, you go, just be patient. Like, we don't know what we're going to do, but hang in there. And at the end, and then you were right. As we were completing our job, we had like a week. We're sweeping floor, picking up bolts, making sure everything's flush.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes, okay, you guys have about 10 containers of racking that we have to get out of here. My facility is on the West Coast. And so for me, my always plan B, if I can't sell it, which a lot of times I have, have a network of people out there who want to buy material, but if I can't sell it, it's coming back to my yard. So luckily, I'm pretty sure we transloaded all of those loads of racking. It's not easy, but we put it on containers. It went on a I call it the choo-choo train. It goes on the choo-choo train, and then they take it to what's it called? Where the train? What are those called? I'm losing.
The depot.
Yeah, depot transfer station where they take it off trains and put these containers on trucks, and trucks deliver it.
Yeah.
So that was a great opportunity, and you were right. So
I remember seeing some of your stuff in Manteca that was from that New Jersey deal. Like years later, I was picking through your yard there.
And we brought 2 containers back from Kentucky too. It was the same kind of thing. And it's funny, anytime I tell somebody what I do, and they're a contractor or anything, I've got a lot of guys that I've met over the years, whether it's at a restaurant or on a tour or bar or something, and you start trading war stories, and I go, oh yeah, we decommissioned a big facility, and I have all these carts. They're like 3-tier stainless steel cart or something, and they the guy goes, my warehouse is just full of them because they're worth like $350 a piece, but who's going to sell 80 of those carts? Well,
right.
we did. And that's kind of what we're known for is people, they're from Kentucky. There were those cage carts. Remember those? They folded down like wheels. They were like super heavy duty carts.
Yeah.
And what did you get? You used them for something like it was leather jacket.
We used them. Yeah, we picked on them. So we used cherry pickers and then picked into them and then staged the product of that.
So you would go up on a cherry picker with that whole cage. So it kind of converted into, I never realized that. So it was part, you could roll it around, but then you put it on a piece of lift equipment, and then that goes up. They pull the orders. It had like a garment rack, or it could have been cases or anything.
Right. It's a lot like the ones you made for us at Toys R Us in Nevada.
Yeah. And I definitely want to talk about so 2 things. So Kentucky at the Gap, you mentioned the conveyor thing.
Yeah, the sorter.
Yeah, so we bought that, and we had that sorter. I think we had it quoted to Rite Aid, and they were like not making a decision, and we had it, and it was, it's something like that. It's priced to move because they got to make a decision. We're taking it down. It's either going straight to you. If we have to do anything else with it, the cost is basically going to double. Right. And so we had some interesting conversations at the beginning of that job.
Yes, we did.
Who was going to get the job and if it was going to get canceled. You really, always, it's one of the things with my clients, and I've been lucky because that particular case, there was something was going to be done that wasn't right. You stuck up for us. Right. I mean, I don't want to go too much of detail. I'm definitely not going to mention who was involved.
No.
But,
you gotta be, we've been doing business for years, and through different companies, you got to treat people fairly. And there was some stuff that was needed and taken that wasn't done fairly. So I can't live with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You took a really hard stand. And what I'm talking about is the company where they said our legal department is bigger than yours. So no matter what happens, we're going to win. I noticed, and I forgot. So you have other certifications that you have. One of them is the CARIS. Is it pronounced CARIS, the negotiating?
Yeah.
And one of the things that's funny is a lot of times I can pick up on if somebody's been to those negotiating classes, and it always, I feel a little more comfortable. And I think like people think if you're negotiating, you're trying to get the other guy, you're trying to get that person. And I think people who've had the training, they realize you're not trying to get the other person. You're trying to build a long-term relationship.
Right.
Where you're negotiating, but you're trying to find a third alternative that's better than either one of you could have come up with on your own. Yeah. So
that's the goal. I mean, I don't want you to get rich off me, but I need you to make money because I need you to be around next time I call.
and ours has spread over a long period of time, and
Yeah.
uh, you've earned my trust as a client. Well, I know I can execute and send 20 guys across the country to do a job, and then you can trust me to
Yeah.
do the job. So yeah, with the conveyor, Toys R Us came to me, and it was what was it, late October, whatever it was your major holiday rush.
Oh, it was a Gap. Yeah.
Or
I mean, it was, yeah, it was Gap.
yeah, and they had a facility here on the West Coast. We're doing a tear down on the West
Fresno.
Coast.
Yeah.
So Fresno needed parts, and they were down, right? They were shut down.
Yeah. They had a catastrophic failure of their sort of.
Yeah. So what we did, and I think all of this happened, speaking of the Karis negotiating and everything, we had it quoted. I gave kind of the right aid. I said, look, if you guys don't execute on this, we're selling to someone else right now. I think we sold it back to Gap for half of what we had it quoted to.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a bird in the hand. It was exactly one bird in the hand is worth in the bush.
Exactly.
I think I said yes it was probably 5 o'clock Eastern time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been later. And when our guys got back to work in the morning, they're like, the sorter's gone.
Yeah.
Guys, did they have ninjas come through the roof of the building and take it out? Or?
Well, that was my major discontent, is it was gone before they started negotiating.
Yeah.
And that's not the way we do business.
But they made it right. I mean, they made it right on you made them make it right on every single step of that. Yeah. And then we were able to, they were up and running, I think, within 24 hours. And even back then, that was before supply chain was you and I have been doing this since people didn't even know what is this? Well, there's a supply chain.
They only knew it when things screwed up.
And so things are kind of screwed up, but they were, even back then, I think parts for that conveyor was like 24 weeks or 18 weeks or 14 weeks.
Yeah, it was a long time. Yeah, it was coming from overseas, coming from Germany.
Yeah. And so I really wanted to talk about Toys R Us too, because that was a neat project that really, do we get into the reasons there were behind the 8 ball there? I know I read an article that was written in like 2012 where there were some issues with Amazon.
Yeah, so originally they were on the platform with Amazon, and they didn't like Amazon business practices. So they sued them, and what they got was the ability to do all their online themselves. Well, that was a double-edged sword. So they contracted out to a third party that had their major facility out of Columbus. The previous year, they weren't able to fill all their orders. So that was something they had to, obviously, that you can't grow your business if that's the case. You lose market share pretty dramatically. So they had a 12-month turnaround to get that up for fall season. And we got that thing up and running in October. And I always tell the story that for the month of October, we did 540,000 orders. And the 24 hours after Thanksgiving, we did 595,000 orders. That one 24 hours. So the sales spike is obviously dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go from 40 employees to over 506 weeks.
Yeah, it was incredible. I just remember the time frame on that. And you had us making some very specific picking carts, and they were aluminum, and they were, that facility, and it was fairly automated, and that had a Kiva system, right?
It was 100% Kiva. That facility was 100% Kiva.
The whole thing was Kiva.
The picking and storage we had a bulk storage that was behind it that supported it, and then inbound was obviously not Kiva, but the rest of it, all picking, packing, was all Kiva.
And Kiva, I keep describing Kiva, but it's basically a robotic. And I'm going to try to find a short 1-minute video clip. And then I went to ProMat, which is the Pro Material Handling Industry, is put on by Material Handling, MHI Material Handling Industry, and they feature all the latest and greatest in robotics technology. And now there's probably at least 3 or 4, maybe 10 generic Kivas, right? It's basically a robot that picks up an entire shelving unit, and brings it to the picker. And
it picks up the selection cart that you're selecting into as well. So you preload the locations with the right size box based on the order type you're getting. And then when those orders are completed, you're picking 12 orders at one time. When those orders are completed, it takes it over to a packing station that gets packed and shipped. A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it's and you've worked multiple. I think you've done three different companies who've used the Kiva system, right?
Two, Owens and Minor had it as well, but for Owens and Minor was a much smaller piece. It was just in their picking section, but yeah, still we could do more with 5 or 6 people in that picking area than we could do with 20 of the pick pod.
And so, do you want to share any of the projects that you're working on currently? I know that you and I were talking about maybe doing some consulting things. We've got some clients here in the direct to consumer industry that their experience, I look at somebody like you've looked at so many projects, where the problems are with, how to structure an RFP for automation, how to track, the metrics and the KPIs and the matrixed nature of the challenges we're facing. So, I know there's some opportunities for consulting out here. You're in Fort Worth, right? Are you Dallas?
Right. Dallas Fort Worth. Mm-hmm.
So you're looking for more local opportunities, and what are some of the type of projects that you're interested in getting involved in?
Yeah, it seems like everyone lately that I've been working with is trying to justify putting in automation. Is it going to pay back what they think it's going to pay back? Is it going to do the volume that they think it's going to do? And the majority of the ones I've worked on lately, the automation did make sense. The level they were willing to go to. They were not going to get the bang for the buck that they had asked for because they were trying to, just automate a small piece of it, and they weren't really, it was going to end up being a big workaround. If you're going to go automation, you really got to kind of go big or go home, and really, what the money you save up front is going to be spent exponentially on the back end. Just, don't go for a partial solution. Try to get the entire solution.
And then how much time is it normally involved in one of these? And I think, we did an event, and I like to do an event about once a year that features a project, and we're gonna come back because it's been, I think it's been 5 years since we did that event where we showed the automation. We toured their older facility and looked at how they were doing it there, and then we had a virtual tour of the new system that was almost complete. And one of the mistakes they had made on that installation when they went for their ROI, they had multiple, a lot of companies, if they're in the third-party warehousing business, which is really what they are, they're a fulfillment center, but they don't own the product in there. They're doing a service for somebody else. So they don't have a lot of control of how the orders come in. But what they've done on their halves in the justification is they had included a process. So it was wine shipping. So half their orders were, one of this, one of that, one of this, one of that. Maybe it was 3 bottles, maybe it was 4, maybe it was a case. But half their volume was a club, where that means all these identical orders. Everybody's getting one red, one white, one Merlot, or whatever. And those, there was no payoff on the system, because those you could just line up pallets on the floors, guys with jacks, gravity conveyor, tag it back, it's out the door. But they had used that volume when they were looking at the payoff. They said, okay, they plugged all the numbers in. And
there's no bank for that. Yeah, there's no ROI.
There's no ROI for that. And for me, we're the technical term for what we do is called a systems integrator, what I do. But what I'm a systems disintegrator.
Yeah.
The best systems I've had are the ones I've taken apart.
Right.
And I agree with you. I think people, I don't know how you could be blind to the fact that you're using these numbers. And then everybody in the room had to know that, or at least that the people running the warehouse, or I just wonder how that disconnect happens. And I think that's why it's important to bring in, somebody like you. I try to be, it seems like if when solutions game, if you sell hammers, every problem looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's true. Well, and there's, people can have the data and a cursory understanding of what they're looking at and make that mistake. You've got to spend time on the floor. You've got to spend time in the operation, understanding where the bottlenecks are, what the problems are, and what are you trying to solve for. That's the other thing is, are you trying to just put more volume through? How much volume and what time frame? And the thing is, don't shoot for the volume you have currently. Most businesses are in growth mode. Shoot for, but you're going to have to in the future. Otherwise, it's kind of like the freeways, especially in California, when they get done with them, they're obsolete. They got to start over,
Yeah.
because they don't handle the volume that they needed when they started 5 years ago. They need to anticipate volume 5 years from now. So, so they start tearing it up and redoing it again. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's what'll happen in any warehouse system. It'll overload it, or it doesn't give you what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you're saying all this, I'm trying to think about the way to get you on an airplane to fly out here. Maybe we would have to combine three, because just as you're talking, I'm thinking of three clients who, could use, and I call it a project. Because the other thing you mentioned, data. A lot of people don't have their data house in order because it's new. I did some research between 2019 and 2020 on data. We actually, one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is I hired a boutique data firm because they wanted me to introduce to my clients. And I'm like, well, before I introduce you guys to anybody, let's see what you can do.
Right.
And they were small. Sometimes, there's big companies that will do this, but a lot of times I think there's an advantage to having a small company who can just help you start generating, what's even possible. And one of my research was that when a company looks at their data, they need to look at like what their team's capability, like what's the leadership capable of? Is their leadership really data savvy? I mean, even if you have an IT, you might have an IT team, but does the leadership know enough? And it's called the digital consciousness index. And then are your clients that digitally savvy? Like for us, some of our clients are, but it's like out of 1,000 clients, only 40 are digitally. And even those, they're not looking at their sales. What's the digital consciousness of their sales? What's the digital of their operations? And all those data now there's with the cloud, I'm starting to learn what the cloud means. And I've always been a late adopter, but getting that data piece right, and that's where your expertise come in. It's like, well, let's look at where's our staff, where's our leadership, where's our IT department, what are the tools we're using now, what are our customers' capabilities? Because then you can tell, and then that's a matrix approach.
Yeah, and is the data correct? And do you have enough history of the data to make sense? I mean, you need years of data so that going into a 4th of July holiday what to expect, or a fall season, because it's fairly predictable. If you can look back the previous 3 seasons, see a 10% bump or a 5% bump, or maybe a lag on certain weekends or weeks, and then you can prepare for that, and that you don't have staff standing around, or you're not short on staff paying tons of overtime. And then do you understand the data? Just because you have tons of data doesn't mean you understand what it means. What's it telling you, and how can you take that data and make it actionable into changing the way you do your operation to make it more efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. And you did a project that I wasn't familiar with, and but I heard about it with HME, with their something to do with the fleet.
We did a fleet refresh. So we were spending tons of time with older trucks, and the thought process is, well, if you can extend your older trucks, you're saving money. You're not having to buy new trucks, and that's absolutely false in most situations. It was, you're not buying new trucks, but you got to calculate all the downtime you have, maintenance costs, and the cost of the human capital of people sitting around because the truck is down, and the capacity loss is huge. And then just the mental aspect on the workers that they come into, equipment that's junk and that's older and dilapidated. So you start throwing new trucks in, and people's attitudes change. Your downtime's done, not as bad. And obviously your repair costs drop dramatically.
And so I'm just curious. I mean, I know you can't tell us how you do, but all those things you're talking about are real costs, right? And that's why when I say I take a holistic approach, it's like, how do you factor in the attitudes of the driver? But when I look at it, like that's the number one KPI for me.
Yeah.
Like, if your attitude sucks, you're not doing anything. But
it's an intangible. But when you look at, we do employee opinion surveys. When we scored consistently low on the equipment availability, equipment quality, the condition of equipment. I mean, that, you can't put a definite KPI to it, but it does account for attrition. It does account for people's attitudes, and it's, that's just an intangible thing you've got to have. And with the turnover and the labor pool, what it is, anything you can do to keep labor happy is crucial.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying is you mentioned the assessment, and so I look at, and so you know how to, when you're doing a matrix situation, you know how to gather that data, because there are ways, like you're saying, it's not easy, but you can do employee satisfaction surveys. There's other, I do what I call a space time audit. And, it's an acronym for SP, but the A is for assessment, right? You have all these assessment because and then accept where you are, because we've assessed it. This is where we are. So that's a great project. And so what was the solution that was it a timing for certain vehicles or certain fleets, or how did it execute?
Yeah, we put together a proposal and looked at the spend on the worst 150 of our trucks from a maintenance standpoint, and came up with a calculator that would basically look at the labor expense of being down, the time that those machines were down, the time they were in the shop, the cost of it being in the shop, and the new trucks for free. You're saving money by getting new trucks. You get better gas mileage with the newer vehicles. The first so many miles are under warranty for repairs if you do have a repair here and there. But literally, we were saving money by getting new trucks, and then you've got a better image of your product driving down the road with your name on the side of it, things like that.
Yeah, that's it. So is there really a cutoff? To me, even if you had 5 trucks, it's worth doing the, but 100.
You've got to, because those other trucks are costing you money. If you can get a brand new truck and it's cheaper than what you're spending on your old truck, how can you not do that?
And I was just thinking, even down to the simplest thing with us, like our people, I do all the sales, I do all this design. The last people that my clients see are my installers. And it's funny, even just, we've always had pretty new trucks, and I want to have a new truck, but for a lot of reasons, it's the reliability. You'd be surprised how many people can't make it to work because of car trouble. And you're like, are you kidding me? We've been working on this for 6 months. The design, it's a drawing, the material got here today. We're just like,
and our drivers are going to rural areas, and they're out 24/7. So, I can't have somebody break down on a back road in Mississippi at 2:00 in the morning. One, we've failed service on a health patient, and 2, it's dangerous. And it may take hours to get a tow truck to where they are if we're able to get one at all.
So I want to ask you a couple final questions, and I could even leave it multiple choice, but I'd like to know, like, your mentors, top mentors you had, and their best advice. And then also, because you got such a great background in technology, if you got any favorite tools and software.
Software is always changing. I'll start there. There's less and less players in the market, it seems like, these days, because there's been some consolidation. Whatever you get, you're going to have to customize, whether it's Manhattan, SAP, Red Prairie. We've used Red Prairie for labor management at multiple places. To me, it's probably the best on the market. But you're going to have to, modify it to meet your individual needs. It's an off the shelf product that you've got to customize. And, and that's really what you're buying is the partnership of their system engineers and things. All the systems can do about the same thing, but how willing are they to work with you on customizing things, and are there other fees to that, the updates and things like that. As far as mentors go, there's been so many, through the years. A gentleman named Bill Aaron was a great mentor. Helped me get my first GM job, years ago in Mervyn's, and there's been many along the way. But I've not just learned from people I worked for. I've learned from people that work for me too. There's something everyone has to offer. And if you're open to it, you can learn. Even the smallest things can help you, get better every day.
Yeah, that's the teach and be taught, which is the T of my space time audit. It is always be teaching, but be teachable. I love what you said about the technology piece, is that it's the relationship. That's what the reason I'm doing this is. I have people, and with you, there's probably only a handful of people in my network. I've been lucky to have, 20 or 30 people that have really, when we did the data thing, I looked at the numbers too, and we tracked 2/3 of my business in the last 17 years. I can track it back to about 25 or 30 people, because it wasn't, it's not just, and I got to give a shout out to Mike Fernstrom. So Mike's a great guy. We were, there were 5 of us. The day I started my company was a work tour, and I was in the leadership of Warehousing Education and Research Council, which is WERC, WERC.org. And I was the president for several years. One thing, we always had an event in Reno, and it just so happened that the day I started my company was the day before the Reno thing. So we're all going in a SUV. We carpooled. It was Chris Murphy, Mike Fernstrom, Tom Vanderweide. It was a crazy group, all leaders. And I started a new company, and I was sick to my stomach. It's funny. I don't get car sick. I don't get anything sick, seasick, but I quit a pretty good job to take off on my own. And Mike Fernstrom was like, "Don't worry, buddy. I got your back." And it's funny because he up to that time, even though Mike and I served on the board together, like I was the president, he was Mr. Arm's length relationship with your suppliers, right? Get 3 bids. Everything has to be the numbers. I'm not giving. It's like, man, I've at least earned a peek underneath the sheets to see what I'm shooting at. And so I was like, great, first room has got my back. But it was funny, within probably 6 months after we started the company, there was a unique project with Mervyn's on the West Coast, and they needed to get a bunch of shelving. They needed to get rid of that big conveyor line, and we had the resources. And then he introduced us in that Salt Lake. And so those relationships, my podcast is a way for me to get back to you guys, right? If I can shout your stories from the rooftops, add some values to it, because I've always thought about it. There was no way I could ever pay you back for the things, that you've helped me with in my career. So I'm hoping this is a way that we can do that. So,
well, and I know I've sent business your way in some instances, both in Tracy and some other places. And the thing that really impressed me was your honesty. And you're in a business where there's not, and I don't want to disparage the business, but there's a lot of people that don't do it very ethically. And I know that firsthand because I had RFPs going on, and I had people calling me, offering me side deals, and, finder fees and all kinds of stuff to get information about RFP and the information that I quickly excluded them from the process. And honestly, you do what you say you're going to do. You're there when you say you're going to be there, and you get the job done. So you're going to do it. You've proven that to me on so many jobs I can't even count. And I mean, if you'll get a job done on New Jersey, and to set the time frame for the listeners, that was right after the hurricane hit. There were areas with no power. You could only get gas every other day. I mean, it was not the ideal circumstances out there, to say the least. And you came through, and you always have. So, like I said, I'm here for the long-term relationships, and when I need stuff, you're the person I call.
Yeah, I appreciate that, David. Folks, we've been talking here with David Smith. He's a really, really, really dynamic and talented supply chain leader with a proven track record that spans decades, multiple industries. They're really, really relevant in today's supply chain challenge, right? The environment. It's not a challenge. It's not a problem. It's a challenge. And I like to say it's not a challenge. It's an opportunity. So what's the best way if somebody wants to get in touch with you, David, either if they're looking for consulting, I mean, if they got a truck fleet that wants to look at a technology project, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you right now?
They can either email me or call me, either one. I don't know if you can put my contact information on the.
We'll definitely have it. We'll definitely put contact information in the description. And then, are you willing to give out your personal email? I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah.
I appreciate it if you did.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
It's dgarey.smith@hotmail.com, and my phone number is 972-365-2288.
Awesome. This has been just great, David. I mean, I've been looking forward to this conversation. You're one of the reasons I'm doing this project. And I know it didn't make total sense at first, and it hasn't, but I mean, this has been a blast. It has really been a blast. Yeah. And
it's good connecting with you again.
It's great connecting with you again. Yeah. You've been a very great client, good friend. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Tao of Pizza podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.